The world of isekai stories is crowded and stale. For every log horizon, there are 15 other series with awkwardly long names and painfully mediocre plots and casts. There hasn't been a series that has shaken up the high fantasy isekai world in a long time. Until Redo of Healer. However, upon reading it or watching it, you will notice that maybe it shook the isekai world for anything but good reason. Redo of Healer is an edgy 14-year-old's wet dream. Redo of Healer is shocking entertainment for people that never consumed shocking media in their life. Watching Redo of Healer is the anime equivalent of drinking a glass of day-old water with a live fly in it. It's tasteless, bland, not refreshing in the slightest, and the only feeling you have left afterwards is the squirming fly going down your throat. Reading Redo of Healer is only slightly better because the fly goes down marginally faster. Redo of Healer is an assault to all senses, and you should be legally liable to compensation after experiencing it. But, most of all, Redo of Healer is a depressing waste of what could have been an interesting deconstruction of the isekai/fantasy genre. With a bit more effort, it could have been an innovative take on a stale genre that tackles complex subjects that most other stories of its kind would never even dare consider head on. Redo of Healer, maybe in a search for more sales, fell prey to the tropes of the genre it could have redefined. Today, we will analyze both the anime and manga adaptations, which are retellings of the original, still ongoing series of light novels. We have not read the light novels, so any plot point or issue exclusive to them will not be mentioned. But everything else is fair game. Needless to say, there will be spoilers for both the anime and manga up to their current latest published entry at the time of writing. So if you want to experience the series yourself, leave and come back once you have caught up. Or given up, that's fine too. Redo of Healer, also known as Kaifuku Jutsushi no Yarinaoshi, or Kai-Yari for short, is a series of light novels originally published in Kadokawa in 2017. The series is written by Tsukiyo Rui and illustrated by Shio Konbu. The series has been adapted into a manga serialized in the Young Ace Up Seinen magazine, with art by Haga Soken, also released in 2017. An anime series was aired in early 2021 and quickly became a contentious piece of animation and a source for much discourse within the anime community. The story follows Keiyaru, a young man in an RPG-inspired high fantasy world. He is one of the chosen heroes, people with exceptional magic and combat skills, with the gift of healing. However, he soon finds out the other heroes are toxic, abusive people who treat him as little more than a slave, making him drug dependent and physically abusing him on a regular basis. Once his anger reaches a boiling point, he uses his magic to turn back time and begins a quest to enact his revenge against those who treated him like trash, by making their lives hell. Along the way, he will amass a group of young women who will assist him in his quest and who are romantically and sexually interested in him. While editing this video, we found this interesting tweet by the series' author, where they say Kyoga's personality is based on themselves. We'll leave the interpretation of these words up to you, but we feel this is not exactly a good thing. Just thought we'd point it out as it gives some additional perspective to the series itself and Rui's other works.
On my first version of the script, I found myself saying that the series looked pretty good for the most part. However, upon rewatching together screenshots, I started to realize just how mediocre it looked from the start, showing a poor use of perspective, subpar facial expressions, and painfully average character design, making it hard for it to stand out in a world with dozens of new high fantasy isekai every year. The problem lies mostly in that As the series progresses, the animation starts getting lazier and lazier, episodes being littered with still images showing just how little care the animation department put in. This can be further explored whenever CGI is used, as despite being released in 2021, it puts on a worse display than shows from 10 years ago. There are soldiers with two swords but one scabbard, knights standing ready for battle in the exact same pose, and much, much more. I can't just go on and shit on the animation though. That energy is better spent discussing the other, considerably more egregious, aspects of the series. Although that's most of them. I have to give credit where credit is due. The more calm scenes are decently animated, with the characters showing emotion through their faces. But the aspect where the animation really shines is the sex scenes. Yeah, I know, but it's truly the best aspect on this front. The movements are fluid, the poses are dynamic. It's mostly a hentai, sure, but it's better animated than most. And that's the saddest part. Every other scene, be it plot driven or fight oriented, just looks lazy in comparison to every moment of intercourse. Because it's seemingly where all the effort went into. If you, for some reason, decide to watch the series after this video, please do yourself a favor and look for the uncensored version. Otherwise, you'll have to endure 4 times the amount of still images per episode, since that's the route they chose to take to solve this problem.
The manga is not without its own flaws either. For one, the art is decent, but it is nothing special. This is excusable, given the artist's apparent inexperience in the medium, since from what we gather, this is their first time working on a serialized manga. But to most of the audience, who will not know this, it looks fairly generic and uninspired. The only exception I will concede is the characters' expressions during the more sinister scenes, as they are quite nice and they remind me of artists like Shinobu Otaka's distorted facial expressions. It's also harder to convey movement and impact in action scenes in manga, which added to the inexperience of the artist means there are multiple shots that feel static or strikes that have no impact at all. We don't ask for Akira Toriyama's dynamic paneling and flowing action, but many of these pages feel lazy or unfinished, especially in the later chapters. Finally, and speaking of the later chapters, there's the issue of page composition. The manga starts off decently well in this regard, with the early chapters having varied, interesting layouts that drive the reader's eyes throughout the page, or at least add some flair to most scenes. It makes the early chapters somewhat interesting even with the rampant inconsistencies and dropped plot points. However, as the story progresses, the manga starts falling more and more into a rigid structure, to the point where in some later chapters, all but 2 or 3 pages have the same 3-panel layout with small variations. Even most action scenes are drawn in 3 horizontal rectangles. This is just lazy, and makes the later chapters an absolute drag to get through, when plot-wise they are already a drag. It's uninteresting to look at, and the small places where the action breaks the panel borders are not enough to distract the reader from the stale composition. I bet if we didn't point them out, many of you wouldn't even have noticed.
The world-building aspect of the series is just a mess, starting from its magic system. We're shown a fantasy world where magic exists, along with races like demons and demi-humans. Their heroes are the pinnacle of magical and physical abilities, able to increase their stats indefinitely. Yes, I said stats, because despite not having any direct connection to RPGs, this world is treated just like any other isekai. Most noticeable once we see Kiaru in his hood, by getting a kiss from a fairy. We're also shown that magic and spells follow some sort of rank system, although this is never clarified since we only learn of techniques ranked from 5 to 7, with the protagonist's abilities never receiving a value in this scale, making it pretty pointless. One can only assume this system is based on old-school RPGs, like the very first Final Fantasy game, where magic followed a numbered tier system, with the highest tiers being extremely powerful spells like Holy and Ultima. But this is never actually explained in any way. It just seems to be a throwaway nod to the RPG world trope in many isekai series, and nothing else. Nothing would have been lost had this one line not existed. Its existence alone makes the world feel lazy and rushed, like the author included it because it's what other isekai do. In fact, an approach like fairy tales, a wizard did it mentality would have worked much better. And that's not even a good system.
Ah, yeah. Well, whenever you notice something like that, a wizard did it.
At least with that system, you have the excuse of, it's magic, bro, I don't have to explain shit. Furthermore, near the beginning of the series, we're introduced to the most hentai-like plot point of the story. The fluids of a male hero can increase the prowess of normal people, which is just okay. Obviously, this is gonna mean sex, there's no other way to go about it. Being this skill one of the main reasons for one of the girls joining the party. But it doesn't matter at all, because it's dropped for the most part, only becoming something the protagonist does with the members of the harem occasionally going forward, as a sort of passive training or maintenance. Of course, when talking about the magic system, we have to address the elephant in the room. Heal. Are you tired of being the weakest member of your party? Sick of being abused by your peers and even your servants? Well, you're in luck. Introducing Heal, the solution to literally all your problems. You can heal yourself and your allies from various wounds and ills. Revive people. Make people fucking explode. Copy abilities. Implant memories. And turn back time. With no drawbacks. Except all the pain in the old chapters, but that's mostly drop eventually as well. Order now at healisabsolutebs.com. In other words, Heal does whatever the plot wants it to do, with no regards on what the story actually needs, or what little bit of order the series had. Healers were introduced as the lowest type of hero, but using their own signature spell, they can realistically do anything. Heal is not a power, it's a plot device, and a very cheap one at that. Creating believable tension is literally impossible, as long as Heal has such wide applicability. Stepping onto another territory, the pacing of the series generates more problems for the narrative, and for two main reasons: conflict and sex. We'll look at them one by one. The main drive of the series is revenge, being this the only motivation Kyaruga has, since his past was established early on. This should give him enough momentum to last at least 10 episodes, right? Then why? Why do we have to see a scene to add unnecessary conflict every 2 episodes? There's literally no reason for some of the horrible actions we see throughout the series, except to give immediate motivation for the party to act or to justify whatever crime they're going to commit next. We'll talk more about this poor decision making later when analyzing the characters more, but it's worth mentioning now. The next point is, of course, the sex scenes. Because Read of Healer is definitely not hentai, the sex scenes are vital to the plot, of course. Like when our protagonist goes to have a threesome after both his mother figure and almost all of the people he knew while growing up are killed, mostly because he chose not to act earlier. The sex scene in the lake was of utmost importance, just as much as all the times they have sex next to Eve, while the latter was visibly uncomfortable. The can be argued that this could have been a decision from the higher-ups to keep the viewer interested, but it hurt the pacing of the story big time.
In the introduction, you might remember that we mentioned that reading this series is slightly better than watching the anime. But that's still saying that being punched in the gut hurts less than being kicked in the genitals. The one thing the manga does far better than the anime is pacing. I think most of it comes down to the manga's sex scenes being far, far shorter than the anime's, but it is still very noticeable just how much smoother the flow of the plot is, at least in a binge reading. As of the writing of this script, the manga has about 50 published chapters, though technically the latest translated chapter is in the mid-30s because of chapter numbers that look like a list of Kingdom Hearts spin-offs. The chapters themselves are relatively short and waste no time getting on with the plot, and the art is competent. It is, in a way, the definitive version of the story, unbound by arbitrary runtimes and presented in a small form factor that forces the author to have every couple of pages be somewhat eventful to avoid dead chapters. There are a few slower arcs here and there, but overall it has a decent pace, and there are a few chapters that genuinely feel like filler. Lastly, at least in terms of narrative, our biggest concern with Redo of Healer is that we don't have a clue about what it aims to be. Does this series aim to be a deconstruction of the common tropes in isekai fantasy media? Not really. It plays most of them fairly straight, such as being set in a world of high fantasy, having RPG elements that end up being irrelevant, having the protagonist go up against an entire kingdom, having a male main character with no immediately discernible physical traits surrounded by a harem of girls that include the first member, who is an average good girl with large breasts, a demi-human for the furry demographic, the serious fighter with a sense of justice, the little sister type who may or may not be sexualized, and the reluctant / tsundere one that also has the body of a minor. The only major trope the series subverts is the tone of the series, which instead of a romantic comedy like most harem fantasy is a dark drama / action series, with both drama and action being surrounded by many quotation marks. So, it's not exactly a deconstruction. Then, is it a series about the catharsis of seeing these irredeemable people suffer the consequences of their actions? The answer is also a resounding no. While the series does have plenty of karmic retribution, some of the characters get a pass while others don't. For example, of all the horrible evil characters in the show, the three that do the most heinous things, Kearu, Flare, and Norn, get to live happily together, while others like the Captain and Blade are murdered in brutal ways. Hell, if we count the manga, Blade gets punished by Kyoga twice. The karmic punishment aspect is as inconsistent as the rest of the series. The other option is that the series is simply meant as a simple harem story with little regard for real quality, which relies on its initial shock value to get publicity and sales. Which is a boring option, yes, but there's nothing else to work with here. It's the only possible conclusion. There's no deeper themes being explored, there's not even an attempt to make an interesting world, the characters aren't much better, and the story is a cheap revenge plot that's really hard to get invested in. And even the revenge gets derailed eventually. The story is a mess.
Almost every single character is irredeemable, most of them being either sexual predators, the devil itself, or a combination of both. Take Blade for example. She's one of the heroes of Flare's party during the first timeline. She's seen as a violent stalker who's obsessed with Flare and treats Keijaro like crap, thus becoming one of during his revenge quest. Now keep in mind that, at this point in the show, Keijaro already raped several girls and decimated countless people. So the writers decided to present Blade as a piece of shit as soon as she appeared on screen. It is later revealed that she frequently assaulted girls, and there were multiple rumors about her in the city despite arriving very recently. She goes as far as to sedate her victims and will even attack with murderous intent if they try to resist the assault. In neither of the timelines there's even one scene that presents a single redeemable quality in Blade, as all her character is defined by her obsession with Flare and her love for cute girls. Ignoring the fact that the Empire allowed an actual, admitted and recognized predator to travel with the princess for 4 years, mind you, in the first timeline, Blade had to be established as an even worse human being than Keyarga, so the audience can root for the protagonist instead. Sexual harassment is only funny when it's performed by Keyarga. Otherwise, it is a despicable and condemnable action, right? At the very least, we can say that the protagonist ultimately lets her die instead of brainwashing her to add a new wife for his collection, making her a better character just by the fact that she didn't receive the laziest redemption arc that we have ever seen. Similar lazy backgrounds and irredeemable behaviors are found in Flare, Bullet, and other antagonists, but they mostly follow the same mantra. If our protagonist is an unbearable edgelord with no saving grace, everyone else must have even shitter conducts than him, so Keyarga can be tagged as the nice guy in comparison. And it's not like irredeemable characters are a problem by themselves. Many franchises people love have irredeemable evil villains with no more complexity than I want power, money, land because I want to indulge in them, and they work perfectly fine. Think of characters like Frieza, Dio, and the Golden Era comic book villains like the Joker. They are just evil because doing evil things is fun and they revel in that, and people, including us, love them. The problem is that the show can't make up its mind and decides to give some of them a redemption arc, or just literally turn them into the good guys for no real reason. The first victim of this attempt to fix characters was Flare. She presented herself as a gentle and caring princess, but in reality, she was a manipulative and sadistic woman, who constantly abused the protagonist during the original timeline. Like most characters from Ryu of Healer, she had no positive qualities whatsoever aside from her magical prowess. However, after being abused by our almighty protagonist, thus accomplishing his revenge, he decides to erase her memories for some reason, making her believe that she is his lover, slave or something. This accomplishes nothing, as Flare herself does not exist anymore, becoming Freya from this point onward, who's a cute and caring girl who possesses a strong sense of justice. Instead of giving her reasons to reflect and change her behavior, thus leading to a fulfilling redemption arc, the script simply skipped that step and made her a loyal and kind love interest for the protagonist. The same applies for Flare's sister, Norn, who starts as a sadistic and cold tactician, but then becomes Helen, the new member of Keyarga's party. She's also her lost younger sister, by the way, just because Keyarga felt like we were missing the Imoto trope. Let's turn the members of the harem into a different character entirely, so that we don't have to write anything complicated, because how dare the love interests be flawed and held accountable for their actions? Why develop characters when we can simply jump straight to the conclusion, as spending time redeeming characters will take precious screen time that we can simply spend on sex and torture porn scenes. I can only speak for myself here, but erasing their memories and creating new characters based on Keyarga's will is a detriment to his revenge quest, as Freya and Ellen don't remember their original selves, nor what they did in the past. This means that they are living happily alongside the protagonist instead of despising their new reality. When Freya obliterates the Empire's army in one fell swoop, she feels nothing, as she simply treats them as opposition. She has no conflicted feelings or remorse for murdering her former troops. While Keyarga fully enjoyed these scenarios, as a viewer I simply felt nothing, because Freya herself felt nothing during these situations. Rather than accomplishing his revenge, the protagonist's actions usually hinder this objective, as Freya and Ellen are probably living a happier life than ever before, despite being forced to do so through brainwashing shenanigans. Instead of facing the hell that Keyarga went through for 4 years, what's the point of making the girls sexual slaves if they are on trouble with such a role? And the fact that they don't remember who they were makes it even worse.
As you could see, there wasn't a real effort in establishing a magical system, characters, or strong plot lines in the show. There are glimpses of story and development, but they end up falling short or being forced and way too convenient. So here we have a list of questions or scenes that raise a few eyebrows, be it for bad animation, poor storytelling, or bad characterization. Anyway, what is a level 7 magic spell? What is the magic system? Was it necessary to abuse Flare for 8 minutes and 44 seconds? Why did Kiara erase her memories instead of killing her? How does the level cap work? Why does having sex with a male hero increase the level cap? What do levels even do? Why is Kiara being attacked by hit markers? Was it necessary to ban Setsun after a decent emotional scene? He could have saved the village by murdering everyone with his super speed, yet he didn't. Maybe he was intimidated by the only dual-wielding swordsman. Why is Fleur a VTuber all of a sudden? What happened with the healing weakness? What is the magic system? Why are there so many random sex scenes? Why am I supposed to laugh at senseless sexual harassment? Why is he blaming Eve in this situation? Why was someone raped back how? Why do we keep sexually harassing Eve? Why is Blade such a degenerate? How was she allowed to travel with Fleur despite being a well-known predator? Where are the authorities despite her behavior being public knowledge at this point? Why is Kiara cross-dressing instead of sending one of the girls? Why is Fleur a VTuber again? Why did Fleur wait until half the city was murdered to stop the soldiers from attacking? When did this guy and Kiara become such good friends? And the guys from the bar not his friends? Why did this supposed important antagonist die in one simple attack? Why did they have this battle to make him explode for no reason? Why did he keep Norn alive? Why the emote trope? Why sexualize the emote? Why is Kiarga saying that he's driven by revenge and hatred, yet his harem is living happier than ever? What is the magic system? Why did we have to read all of these details on a wiki?
Despite being warned countless times that watching redo of Healer was going to be a painful experience, I made the call of watching this piece of crap because I thought, it can't be that bad, right? Famous last words. Anyway, let's grade this abomination and call it a day. Production value. The animation itself isn't unappealing nor plainly bad. It falls more into the category of being lazy. Sometimes the anime skipped frames. Sometimes frames were distorted. And other times I felt like I was watching a slideshow. However, the torture porn segments and sex scenes were properly animated, so they didn't animate everything correctly because of laziness or just lack of passion for the project. The colors were alright, I guess, and the soundtrack was there. The voices, however, were pretty decent, and I actually felt uncomfortable during the torture scenes for the same reason. Overall, it's kind of a mixed bag, not shining in anything in particular, and being hindered mostly for a lack of commitment to the final product. Storytelling. While the initial concept is alright, everything else is a total mess. Forced plot points, stupid decisions, and a poorly built magical system will throw you out of the immersion. Most of the time I was questioning what was happening on the screen or why certain scenes developed as they did, such as the attempt to save the villagers or the massacre at Branica. The cherry on the top is the heal ability, which is one of the most ridiculous plot devices that we have ever seen, being tied only by the smartphone in the smartphone isekai. It literally does anything you want, period. Characters. Most of the cast is portrayed as irredeemable and comically evil, with forced redemption arcs in the form of brainwashing as a mix-up. There are 3 or 4 characters who have positive traits, but one of them dies and the other ones do not have much screen time, Setsuna being the only exception to this. While most of them are stupidly toxic like OG Flare, Blade and the protagonist himself, Setsuna, Kureha and Anna had some development or nuances. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. Enjoyment. I did not enjoy rape scenes, I did not enjoy random sex, and I don't think that passing the blame to the victim is comedy. If you don't like torture porn, simply skip the show and save yourself the hassle. The show is inconsistent and it got super boring during the second half. I believe that the random sex scenes were there to please its niche public, but the product itself fails to attract other audiences. Probably, this was one of the shows that was physically painful to watch because unlike bad media like The Room or Fateful Findings, there's nothing to laugh at here.
In conclusion, there's almost no redeemable qualities to speak of in Redo of Healer, at least not in the adaptations. If any of you come and tell us the novels are better, we believe you, as we don't want to check. If you like this show, that is fine. We have shows that we like that we recognize are bad. However, our experience with this story was very unpleasant, not only due to the crude parts of the plot, but also due to the lack of quality in almost every technical aspect of the series. There is very little to salvage from the show, and it's sad that a series with so much potential for a mature story in a mostly juvenile genre took the easy way out and immediately squandered all of said potential.
Hey there! During the editing of this video, an interview with the creator was released by the Anime Man, which gives a little insight on the mindset Rue had when writing. He mentioned how he wrote a revenge story because it was what was trending at the moment, and that sales are an important factor for him, which, if anything, is a respectable show of honesty. He looks like a pretty cool guy since the furry costume, and I recommend you listen to the interview if you're interested. While we can't consider him a good writer, he is definitely a good businessman.